Yeah, it's like boom, boom, boom. Action. Okay. I don't really need this, but alright, so we're recording now. Yeah, this close sidebar. So today we're going to be talking about the difference between tropical and sidereal astrology. So just a quick summary here. The reason that I'm making this video, and I have notes here you can read, but you know, I'm pretty much just gonna go from memory. I'm making this video because I see that there's a lot of people that use astrology and identify with tropical zodiac systems, and you know, I see it in pop culture, sitcoms, movies. You know, when they release certain things, you could see that, you know, they might have released a movie during the Gemini season, X, Y, and Z, for example, a scary movie, the new scary movie that comes out on June 5th. So, my position, right, I want to make really clear, right, so I have gone through my life and I have always not really believed in the zodiac system, or, you know, really any system, you know, like religion or any other thing. You know, I've technically been a Christian. I believe in God, but no system. So I always looked within to develop who I am, and so now 28 years old, young rather, the thing I want to outline is more so to enlighten people on, you know, some facts around astrology. So there's a lot of people that make videos, and YouTube is very saturated with horoscopes and, people saying like, we have Uranus in Gemini, the sun's going in Gemini, X, Y, and Z, and, here's a prediction for each of the zodiacs. But the problem is that this is based upon... Now you can't hear that. The problem is that the videos that are uploaded, right? Astrological videos, sun sign, Venus, researching, security, relationships, materialism. Funny example: Leo suns, Leo Venuses, core personality. My mom, people who have been deceived, understandable, enlightenment. Interestingly, my position. So, the current state of astrology is predominantly tropical, and the reason for that is, for many reasons, but, tropical astrology was originally created by, let's see here, tropical astrology created when, by who? Ancient Greek, Hellenistic. So when was tropical astrology pushed to be believed in? Sidereal, tropical astrology, Roman Catholic. Tropical astrology, 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 tropical astrology. Tropical astrology, tropical astrology, alright, we're back. Okay, so the main thing that I've seen on YouTube is that it's oversaturated with a bunch of astrology things, and all of it is, based upon tropical, the fixed system. Now we have plenty of people, doing 45-minute videos going through each zodiac for, a moon transit that occurs every 2.5 days or so. Or, even when Uranus enters a new thing, right? So there's so many videos that are out there. Now, this is the problem. So the 2nd century Greek astronomer Claudius Ptolemy, widely credited for establishing tropical astrology, which initially received pushback. So the sidereal zodiac system was predominantly used. They predominantly used the stars, right? And then, around the time of 2nd century, Ptolemy proposed that, we set it to a fixed system at 0 degrees Aries for the equinox, and then we'll, divide it so we have, 12 zodiac signs. So the problem with that is that the initial astrology, the initial zodiac system was created by looking at the sun and looking at the constellations. That is how the zodiac traits were defined. So they defined what a Aries, Gemini, Virgo was based upon what they saw in the sky. Okay? They did not care about the calendar. So the main reason why tropical astrology should not be given credence is because it simply takes traits that were developed by looking at the actual sky, and it takes those traits and applies them to a completely different system. So you're saying when behind the sun we saw Gemini, we wrote down what people did, and we wrote down how people acted, and overall what people were born during that time eventually became. So this is what ancient people did, and that's how Gemini became defined as X, Y, and Z, or Virgo. Now, you take those signs in that system, you take that from the real astrology and you try to cast that onto a different system that is based upon the days in the calendar or the seasons or the equinox, whatever it is just wrong systematically, systematically and principally. That's just not, there's no consistency in that, So I'm going to explain a little bit more about why, if you resonate with your tropical zodiac sign, why that might be. So that is that. So let me just show you real quick here. Astrology diagram. Sun model. Like show you what we're really talking about here. So basically, this is us on Earth, right? So when we're talking about zodiac signs, we're talking about the sun being in a certain zodiac. As the Earth and, everything spins and whatnot, we have a sun here. And so you look at the sun. And so when the sun is in Gemini, when you look at the sun, Gemini would be right here. So as you can see, so say we're on Earth and you look at the sun, you see Sagittarius behind the sun. So the sun is in Scorpio or Sagittarius. You understand? And it's the same thing with other planets. So the reason that I'm making this video is to help people who, may resonate with the tropical zodiac sign. So just to enlighten people more so about, what the truth is. So that was, just a quick example of how astrology was actually formed, the model you can see, and how the traits actually were formed. Tropical astrology, 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 tropical astrology. So now that we've talked about exactly how astrology was formed and why tropical astrology is more of a theory and isn't really factually based like real astrology was, which is how, they defined the traits of each zodiac sign. And just to show you here, the traits of each zodiac were defined and assigned based upon how they observed people acting when they saw the constellation and people born in ancient times, right? So you see the traits of each zodiac were defined and assigned based upon how they observed people acting. Initially, I just asked it this and it literally said the opposite. Tropical astrology, 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 tropical astrology. Alright, we're not using ChatGPT because it literally just gave me the opposite answer. So, obviously, everything is based upon the reality, right? And the reality is that the reason that we have any form of, division between 12 things and, the reason that we have constellations is because that is what, they observed in the sky. So the initial astrology was formed based upon them observing what they saw. The reason and that's the reason why you can't apply that to a different system. So, people, when they find this out, right? Now we're going to talk about pretty much what happens when people figure this out, because most people don't believe in astrology to begin with. So, if most people don't believe in astrology to begin with, it's obviously a less known topic and it's not in the mainstream. So, when people find out initially, they usually, either choose one of the two sides. They say that they resonate with tropical or they resonate with sidereal, right? And a lot of people say, oh, well, there's credence in both systems and X, Y, and Z. But the problem with that is, again, that astrology is fundamentally based upon the stars, the constellations, And that's initially how it was formed in ancient times. So most people have known somewhat about their zodiac sign. Like, they teach you kind of what it is. And so throughout their lives, most people know what their zodiac is, and they might resonate with it, and they might have lived their lives, fitting into that narrative, right? So maybe you have the same sign in both, and that's, doesn't really matter. But a lot of people might be Cancers, but they think that they're Leos based upon the shift. And people, when they attach to a belief system, they end up, carrying out actions and characteristics, right? When people believe that they are something like religion or any other system, they'll end up doing things and acting in a different way than they naturally would. So the reason why this is particularly something that I can talk about effectively is because I was supposedly a Cancer zodiac, right? Being born on June 25th. And that, never made sense to me. And nobody in my family either really believed that either. So I never really cared about the zodiac system. I thought it was all kind of just bullshit. And a lot of people do as well. And they very well probably have the wrong sign in their minds. So, like I said, I pretty much developed my own views internally, and never really attached to a system like astrology or numerology. But I've recently found out about sidereal and Vedic astrology, which is, a lot more enlightening, right? And so now that I'm older and I've found out about Vedic astrology or sidereal astrology, in terms of recollection, seeing that internally that's who I naturally became, and those are the traits that I naturally exhibited, is much more like profound, right? Whereas from birth, thinking you're something and then doing things to satisfy that narrative is a little bit more of like a placebo effect almost. But nevertheless, you might believe you're a Leo and then you're actually a Cancer in the real astrology. And so you do things that are, develop certain traits and aspects about your personality that might have similarities to what you would define as a Leo. Anyways, so the reason that I wanted to explain this specifically is because the tropical system is offset by a certain amount of degrees, so that lines up for everybody that's born in our timeline on our Earth right now in 2026 generally has, either the same Venus sign or a previous Venus sign, right? There's a lot of alignment between Venus and the tropical system, right? So a lot of people who are born in the actual Cancer, or rather, people that are born in the tropical Leo and believe they're Leos, are actually Cancers, but they have Venus in Leo. Venus is governed, Venus governs relationships, value, Yeah, I'm going to cut that last part. So people that are born during the tropical Leo believe they're Leos, but in sidereal, the stars actually were Cancer. However, Venus aligns with Leo, right? So that's what I mean, is that Venus aligns more closely to the tropical system in many cases. So those people may believe, that they are a Leo regardless of the sidereal astrology, but they don't realize that when they look at the actual astrology that their Venus is in Leo. And that makes them value material things, relationships, and their sense of security through Leo. So obviously, if somebody is telling them you're not actually a Leo, or they're finding out that they're not actually a Leo, they're they feel off and they don't feel right. It's like, it doesn't make sense. And they have that sense of sadness because they're like, why? This doesn't make sense. Why would this happen? And what it is that they actually have Venus in Leo. And so that actually specifically is connected to their sense of security and value. So in a lot of cases, when you tell people what the actual astrology was, it might directly conflict their sense of security and identity. Not identity, but, again, a lot of people attach their sense of identity to security, right? So then, when they find that out, then it makes a lot more sense and you realize what it is. So the example that I noted here is that if your sun sign is Cancer, but you believe it's Leo, but your Venus is also Leo, which would be the case of somebody who's born in, any time in July, right? If you're born in like July 23rd, you're actually a Cancer sun, but you might have Venus in Leo. So you see what I'm saying? And that means that when you interact with people and, you interact with materialism, right? Venus governs materialism, relationships, and value systems, right? So when you interact with people, you might be, you try to be the life of the party, or you might have, dramatic responses, right? Maybe you're annoying as can be, and you're very dramatic. For example, my mom, she has Venus in Leo, and a lot of times she does feel that me and my sister do not appreciate the things that she has told us, right? So when she, tells us something or talks to us, there's this sense of wanting to be, praised to an extent, which is, coherent with Venus and Leo. Again, this is real astrology, not tropical. And so if you live your life and you believe that you are a Leo sun because the tropical system has deceived you, you might, attribute that more so to your core personality and your core essence, but it's actually more so related to your value systems and your relationships with people. So the example is, if you are, a person that likes to party and you like to go to parties and you like to do, the example is that if you are a person that likes to go to parties, or, always be surrounded by friends and whatnot, then you might, be doing things that are squandering your energy and your potential. For example, people go on decades where they go to bars, they go hang out with friends, and they're kind of just on autopilot, kind of just like, what is it really that you're looking to do, and what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? And they, again, might believe that they're a Leo for this specific example. And obviously there's billions of other combinations, but so they do that. They're always hanging around with friends to be the life of the party because, it feels to them like, well, they're a Leo. Obviously Leos are, they like to be the center of attention, X, Y, and Z. But what they're neglecting is that their true core personality, gives them their biggest potential. And, naturally when they're, nurturing themselves, building themselves in their home and their family, right? But unfortunately, they, for the past decade, have been, partying and doing X, Y, and Z and neglecting a lot of that, right? So that's again, a perfect example of how, the Venus or another planet, because it's not just Venus, what I'm saying? Like your moon sign could be something that also relates to the tropical system that explains something, right? And again, so the main reason that I am telling you this is because it can squander your energy, right? So, for example, me, right? I have, I am born on June 25th, right? So for that specific year, the Venus, had just went into Cancer the day before, so I'm right at the beginning of Venus in Cancer. So I have a lot of that Venus in Gemini, but I also have a lot of that Venus in Cancer too. So that's why, in general, Venus in Cancer, when you interact with people, you might give them solutions, or you might be, what I'm saying, like, kind of like nurturing, what I'm saying? So like, but what it really attributes more so to is like how I'm giving you this helpful video, right? But it's more so just about, I would say, like improvement. I don't know. So the thing with that, what I'm saying, is that it's a perfect example. So it's a perfect example of exactly how that lines up, is that if I have Venus in Cancer, right, and I'm making this video and I'm showing you, oh, okay, all right, that's fine, actually. All right, so we're going to cut that, and we're going to fucking tie those losers up, right, just like that. So, yeah, anyways, if I, have Venus in Cancer, which, being born on June 25th, I, I'm actually a Gemini sun, but my Venus is in Cancer. It's actually right at the beginning, so I do have a lot of that, Venus, Gemini, but I do, when I interact with people, I'm always, I'll give people solutions or information just, randomly, and, there's always that curiosity about what people might be doing in terms of like, like health, or even just, psychologically and philosophy. And so that is a perfect example of exactly how I'm presenting this video to you, to provide that, solution to something that people don't even really, realize is going on right now. So anyways, the reason that all of this matters in the first place is that, like I said, personally, I, grew up and, I was told supposedly that I was a Cancer, but it never really fit, and nobody in my family, like, believed that anyway either, because, when I was a kid, I was always just asking, like, why does this do this? Why does this do this? What I'm saying? Like, curious, what I'm saying? And on a side note, what I'm saying? Like, I really don't care about people's emotions, and I definitely don't make decisions, based upon emotions either. So those two aspects, drove me away from astrology, because I thought that that was just what it was, you know. So I was like, whatever, you know, maybe it's not true. And I found out about sidereal, which is based upon what the constellations actually were in the sky. And that's when, like I said, recollecting and like looking at my life and what I've done and what I do, my patterns, I was like, oh, you know, it says I'm a Gemini, and I was like, oh, okay, so like, what's a Gemini? I didn't even really know, and I was like, oh, you know, always having multiple ideas, intellectual, seeking knowledge, curious, X, Y, and Z, and that's why I was like, yeah, like, that's crazy, because that is actually like what I do, what I've done, you know what I'm saying? In terms of like Venus, you know, like I said, I've always, you know, had like, you know, kind of like an awareness of like what people might be thinking, you know, and got that, you know, Venus, Cancer, and then, you know, some of that Venus Gemini energy, which, you know, makes me very knowledgeable in terms of like providing information that might be of use to people. So that is specifically why I want to, you know, enlighten you guys on this information. The other thing is that it's very difficult for some people to, you know, if they have their entire identity attached to something, you know, be open to even, you know, anything, right? Whereas like me, again, I'm much more of I don't really, you know, lock into one thing. I really, you know what I'm saying? So like, it's actually very hard to like, you know, manipulate me or expect something specific of me, because I'm always, I'm never like stubbornly locked into one certain thing of what I'm going to do. So very hard to predict. And I think that, you know, becoming, or, you know, learning a little bit more about what it actually is, why it exists, and the aspects of it can help explain a more logical, you know, reasoning, other than just, you know, you are a Leo in tropical, but you're actually a Cancer. That's the way it is, you know what I'm saying? Which can make a lot of people be sad, or, you know, just be like, what is this? I don't believe this. They might not even want to believe it. And that's, you know, particularly a route that I could see more people going. But again, what it is it's really just about understanding what the information is. Like, what is the information that's in front of your face? Why do we have 12 zodiacs? Well, we have 12 zodiacs because there's a certain amount of constellations that appear in the sky for a certain amount of time. I think there's like 35 of them or something. And, you know, we attributed, you know, to, you know, that was simplified to like 12, and then, you know, there's 12 different constellations, and they created zodiacs, and then, you know, X, Y, and Z. And, you know, before tropical astrology came around, most people actually, you know, used, you know, either a symbolic representation or, you know, the actual constellations. So the unfortunate part is that, you know, it's been so repressed, you know. So like a good example of, you know, somebody that's famous is Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson's born on August 29th, 1954 or something. I don't know the year. He is supposedly a Virgo, but he doesn't really seem like a Virgo, right? So a lot of people, you know, this is why this is so, you know, important, because a lot of people don't believe in astrology. So the people that do believe in astrology is already not a lot of people, and they're all going to say like, oh, Michael Jackson is a Virgo. But when you look at his actual astrology, he is a Leo sun, right? Because Leo sun starts August 13th, 14th for our generations. You know, you go back 500 years ago, it was different. That ends on September 13th, 14th. But Michael Jackson has a, Michael Jackson has a Leo sun, and his Venus is in Cancer. So this actually explains Michael Jackson perfectly, though, because he brought that fiery energy and that, you know what I'm saying, that spotlight, you know, the biggest pop star ever, you know what I'm saying, like impulsive music. His music is very impulsive. You're just shouting, he, blah, 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 whatever, you know what I'm saying? That is like Leo performer, entertainer energy right there. And then when you see him talk in interviews, he's like, and so he has, you know, dead center Venus in Cancer, you know what I'm saying? So he's just like straight up, just like when he interacts with people, it's completely like, he's not gonna hurt you, you know what I'm saying? He's whatever, he's just really personable. And other than that, you know, I don't know his other signs, but I think that's a very good example of where you just like analyze those two signs and you see it. You see that Michael Jackson has a Leo sun, and you see that he has Venus in Cancer by the way he interacts with people, which, by the way, again, is directly in the middle, because depending on where it is, if you're at like 1 degree or 2 degrees, you know what I'm saying, you might have a lot of aspects of the sign before, or if you're at like 29 degrees, 28 degrees, you might have a lot of signs. You might have a lot of aspects of the sign that's, you know, next. But I think generally it's more so when it's at the beginning, right? So when you're at the beginning of a sign, that's more so when you will have aspects of the sign that's previous. But I mean, you could interpret that a bunch of different ways. Anyways, so for example, I have Venus in Cancer, right? I'm kind of psychic, you know, in terms of like understanding what people might be thinking. And I do, you know, offer advice and things to people. But on the other end of that, I also don't care about people's emotions. So that's where, you know, I can be kind of ruthless. So that's an example of that. But other than that, I don't think there's really anything else that I wanted to, you know, put in this video. You know, that's the core idea. You know, I'll just scroll through this so you can read this if you want to pause and read it. The example of my mom having Venus and Leo, you know, extremely dramatic in terms of like when she interacts with me and my sister, she's really wants us to like praise her. So again, another thing is that somebody who has Venus in Leo versus somebody who has a Leo sun is that somebody who has Venus in Leo is going to be a lot more, again, you know, especially if they think they're a Leo sun, they're going to be a lot more of like, you know, potential to interact with people negatively. Like, you know what I mean? Because like they value people, you know, seeing them as this star, this center of attention and, you know, whatnot. But, you know, their real energy, their core personality, what they naturally will be good at and, you know, grow from, if they have a Cancer sun, is, you know, nurturing their family, nurturing themselves, you know. Whereas you have like Michael Jackson, again, who just kind of embodies that Leo energy with what he does, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, ChatGPT kind of reworded what I said. I didn't say, I never tried to become a Gemini, but I guess that is kind of true, right? So, like, I never, like, wanted to be a Gemini or, like, X, Y, and Z. Like I said, I just kind of found out about it, looked at it, and then I realized, like, I didn't even know what a Gemini was until I, like, learned that I was supposed to be a Gemini in the sidereal system, which, again, I didn't expect it to be true. But then I learned it was, like, actually based upon what we see from Earth. And so I was like, well, that sounds correct. And so I was like, well, like, what is tropical based upon? Oh, they say it's like, well, we're just fixing it to the seasons, and then we're using, every 30 days or so, we're just going to change the sign. It's like, that doesn't make scientific, principles, first base principles sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see the consistency of principle in saying something like that. You know what I mean? So, you know what I'm saying? Like, and yeah, so again, so there's some of that Venus Cancer. I don't want people to feel bad. I mean, if you want people to feel bad, you're kind of a piece of shit. No, if you want people to feel bad, you are a piece of shit. But, so yeah, again, another reason that I'm making this video is because I don't want people to, feel bad if they figure this out. So if you're searching this and you find this, you see that X, Y, and Z, it'll help you understand exactly what might be the underlying reasons for it. So that's it. That's the end of the video. Like, subscribe, comment, and share, especially if you know anybody that is involved in astrology. And, spread this to people that might be mindlessly perpetuating tropical astrology. Because if you're going to be giving, horoscopes and stuff on tropical astrology and X, Y, and Z, I feel like you should at least, make it clear, like, this is tropical and not sidereal. This is not real astrology. This is a hypothetical system with symbolic meaning, where we say that these dates in the calendar are related to these zodiac signs and X, Y, and Z, and that's all it is. All right, that's it. Have a good day. So another thing I just want to add about the whole thing with the zodiac signs. So another thing that I just want to add about the zodiac signs or the tropical system is that people on YouTube that are talking about this tropical system, they are right. People that are talking about this tropical zodiac system, they're making videos and they're saying that the moon is in Gemini. So that's where I actually kind of have a problem with that, because that's actually just like a lie. Like, it's actually just not true at all. Like, so when you say the moon is in a certain zodiac sign, you're implying that the moon is in that constellation when you look at the sky, like we saw in the example, right? So whether or not you want to symbolically assign value and say that, between May 22nd and June 22nd is Gemini. Like, whatever. If you want to assign symbolic value for whatever reason and claim that that's the case, like, okay, but like, again, there's no scientific like backing for that. But when you say that the moon is in Gemini, like, because today is the whatever Thursday, June 4th, the moon is in probably like Capricorn or something. And you say that the moon is in Gemini or whatever because of the tropical system, it's like literally just a lie. It's literally not. If you literally look at the moon, it actually is in a certain constellation, which aligns with the sidereal astrology. So I don't even remember. I think the way that they determine the moon is like it's based upon like what the opposing sign is or something like so. Yeah, when people say like the moon is going into a certain sign, like you can't believe them because they're using like some weird tropical like inverted calculation that has no scientific like justification to say that the moon is in that sign. But if you say that, if you look at the sidereal, that's what you actually see. That's why you enter the location. So again, that's where again you make kind of two distinctions where you say like, okay, you have the tropical system predominantly focuses on the sun sign, and that's where your sign is. That is, again, a symbolic representation. So every other sign, like the moon and whatever that they include in the tropical, is also just like a symbolic representation, but it has much less credence. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're saying like Saturn is in a certain sign because of the where the moon is, like, let me see, how does okay, yeah, so it if the moon longitude is 15 degrees from Aries, it's based again upon that sun. So it's like no scientific, like the moon is actually in a certain sign, and that's why sidereal is the winner. All right, that's it. Oh,